Imagine a veteran stepping onto a grand stage, carrying the weight of memories only a soldier can understand. As he begins to sing a tribute to the brothers he lost, the entire audience is left in stunned silence. But what happens next? A raw, unscripted moment from President Trump shocks everyone. The National Remembrance Concert at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., was a night dedicated to honoring the sacrifices of fallen soldiers. Under the glow of the monument's towering columns, a sea of military officials, Gold Star families, veterans, and dignitaries gathered, their presence a solemn tribute to those who had given everything for their country. The air carried a sense of reverence, the soft murmurs of conversation occasionally broken by the distant sound of a military band playing in the background. At the front of the audience, President Donald Trump sat among top military officials, his expression composed as he listened to General Richard Hayes, a retired four-star general and the event's keynote speaker. The night had followed the familiar rhythm of tributes, speeches, and moments of reflection, each met with polite applause and respectful nods. But beneath the ceremony's formal structure there was a deeper, unspoken weight. The knowledge that for many in the audience, this was not just an event, but a personal remembrance of loved ones lost. Then, the general's voice shifted, carrying a new intensity. "Tonight," he announced, "we have a special guest, a man whose voice carries the stories of those who never came home." The audience stilled, sensing that this moment would be different. As the applause settled, Daniel Cole, a veteran, slowly made his way to the stage. Though his posture remained strong and dignified, the years of service and sacrifice were evident in his movements. He adjusted the microphone, his weathered hands gripping the stand with quiet strength. He took a steadying breath, his gaze scanning the audience. Gold Star families, decorated generals, fellow veterans, and civilians who had never set foot on a battlefield. Finally, his eyes settled on President Trump, who sat watching intently. "I want to thank you all for being here," Daniel began, his voice even but laced with emotion. "I know nights like this are about honoring those who served, about remembering their courage, but for those of us who lived through it, who lost brothers on the battlefield, it's more than a ceremony. It's a promise never to forget." The audience listened in silence, drawn in by the weight of his words. "For years, I carried their voices with me," he continued. "But one night, as I lay in a hospital bed, recovering from wounds I wasn't sure I'd survive, I did the only thing I could. I wrote a song. Not for myself, but for the ones who never made it home." Reaching into his pocket, Daniel pulled out a small folded piece of paper, its edges worn from time. "Tonight," he said, unfolding it, "I'd like to share it with you." The room held its breath, knowing that this was no ordinary performance. It was a tribute written in blood, memory, and sacrifice. The first notes of the soft piano accompaniment echoed through the vast Lincoln Memorial, filling the air with a melancholy stillness. Daniel Cole closed his eyes for a moment, drawing in a deep breath before beginning to sing. His voice, though roughened by time and experience, carried a weight that cut through the night. Not just words, but memories, emotions, and the echoes of those who never came home. The lyrics painted vivid images of young soldiers, of friendships forged in war, of promises made under moonlit skies in foreign lands, and of the ones who never made it back. Each verse was a testament to sacrifice, a raw, unfiltered tribute to the brothers in arms he had lost. As Daniel sang, the audience sat frozen in place, their eyes locked onto the man who, in this moment, carried the weight of an entire generation's grief. Some bowed their heads, unable to meet the intensity of the words. Others sat with tears silently streaming down their faces. Gold Star families clasped hands, holding on to each other as they were reminded of the loved ones they had buried. Even hardened military officers, men and women who had seen the horrors of war firsthand, blinked away tears, visibly moved by the depth of Daniel's tribute. The final note lingered in the air, its resonance fading into absolute silence. No one dared to move. It was a moment so profoundly human, so deeply felt that even applause seemed inappropriate, until, slowly, one by one, people rose to their feet, their clapping not just an acknowledgement of a performance, but a tribute to every soldier who had given their life for their country. But amidst the ovation, one man remained seated: Donald Trump. And what he did next would leave everyone speechless. As the audience erupted in a thunderous standing ovation, President Donald Trump remained seated, his hands clasped together, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. Unlike the expected political gestures, the quick nods, the polite claps, the rehearsed responses, this was different. He wasn't just watching Daniel Cole, he was seeing him, understanding the weight of his words in a way that few could. Then, slowly, Trump rose to his feet, not as a politician, but as a man who recognized the depth of sacrifice in front of him. The energy in the room shifted, the applause dimming as all eyes turned toward him. In an unexpected move, Trump stepped forward, making his way toward the stage. His usually commanding presence was now subdued, deliberate, as if carrying the weight of the moment. Daniel, still standing at the microphone, met his gaze, his worn fingers tightening slightly around the paper in his hand. When Trump reached him, he extended his hand, but unlike a brief ceremonial handshake, this one lingered. A handshake between two men who understood the cost of war, who knew what it meant to send soldiers into battle and to see many never return. Then, in a moment that stunned the room, Trump placed his other hand on Daniel's shoulder, a rare, unscripted display of emotion. His voice was steady, but there was something almost unguarded in it when he said, "They'll never be forgotten." The weight of those words hung in the air, resonating beyond the stage, beyond the cameras flashing, beyond the formalities of the evening, and as Trump stepped back, the applause swelled once more, this time louder than before. Not just for Daniel, not just for the song, but for every soldier whose story would never be forgotten. The cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing what would become one of the most unexpected and powerful moments of the evening. The image of President Trump standing beside Daniel Cole, his hand resting on the veteran's shoulder, was instantly iconic. But beyond the flashbulbs and headlines, something deeper had happened. A raw, unscripted connection between a commander-in-chief and a soldier who had given everything for his country. The room remained eerily silent for a few seconds, as if everyone was still processing what had just occurred. Then, the ovation swelled again, this time not just for Daniel's performance, but for what the moment represented, a collective acknowledgement of sacrifice, honor, and the weight of remembering those who never came home. But Trump wasn't done. Instead of returning to his seat, he turned to one of his aides and in a voice loud enough for the audience to hear said, "Get this out there, make sure every veteran in this country hears this." The audience stirred, realizing that this tribute wouldn't just be confined to this one evening. The song, the story, the emotion, it would be shared across the nation, reaching veterans, military families, and ordinary Americans who needed to be reminded of the true cost of freedom. The concert continued, but the energy had shifted. Conversations buzzed, emotions lingered. It was clear this wasn't just another gala performance. Something real had just happened, something that would be talked about long after the final speech of the evening. Within hours, the moment would take on a life of its own, spreading far beyond the Lincoln Memorial and into the hearts of millions across the country. Within hours of the performance, clips of Daniel Cole's tribute and Trump's emotional reaction flooded the internet. News stations played the footage on repeat, with anchors calling it one of the most powerful unscripted moments in recent memory. Social media erupted, with millions sharing the video, each person adding their own caption, "This is what true patriotism looks like," or "A song that speaks for those who can't." Veterans across the country began reaching out, sharing how the lyrics perfectly captured their own experiences. Some wrote that they had never felt truly understood until hearing Daniel's words. Gold Star families, those who had lost loved ones in battle, posted emotional messages thanking him. "I heard my son's voice in your song. This song gave my husband's sacrifice meaning beyond our family." As the song spread, requests poured in. Veterans organizations asked Daniel to perform at military bases, memorial services, and national events. Radio stations picked up the song, and soon, a studio-recorded version was released, with all proceeds going to veteran support organizations. The moment had grown into something bigger than one performance. It became a movement. uniting people across political and social divides. For once, it wasn't about politics, debates, or divisions. It was about honor, sacrifice, and remembrance. Daniel never imagined that the words he scribbled down in a hospital bed decades ago would resonate across generations. But as he watched the overwhelming response, he knew one thing for certain: this song didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to every soldier who never got to sing it themselves. What began as a single performance at the National Remembrance Concert had now grown into a nationwide movement. Daniel Cole's tribute song, once a deeply personal reflection on the soldiers he had lost, had become an anthem for veterans and Gold Star families everywhere. The emotional response from across the country was overwhelming. Veterans, active duty service members, and their families reached out, sharing their stories of loss, survival, and resilience. One morning, Daniel received a letter from President Trump, thanking him personally for his tribute. The letter read, "Your song is more than music. It is a reminder of the heroes we have lost, and the ones who still carry their memory. Every American should hear it." But it wasn't just words. Trump's team followed through on his statement from the concert. Within weeks, Daniel was invited to perform at military bases, veteran support events, and even a Memorial Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. The song was played at funerals of fallen soldiers, at veterans' reunions, and on national broadcasts, ensuring that its message reached those who needed to hear it most. A nonprofit organization for veterans' mental health reached out, asking if Daniel would collaborate on a project that helped soldiers tell their stories through music. It was an opportunity he never expected, but he knew he couldn't say no. For years he had carried the weight of memories alone. Now he had a chance to help others do the same through song. His recorded version of the tribute was officially released, with all proceeds going to veterans' charities, supporting those struggling with PTSD, homelessness, and reintegration into civilian life. The song had done more than just move people. It was making a real impact. Daniel had never sought recognition, only to honor those who never came home. But now, with each new performance, with each veteran who came forward to share their story, he realized that this song was no longer just his. It belonged to every soldier who had ever served and sacrificed for their country. And with that, a tribute had turned into a movement that would outlive them all. A year after the National Remembrance Concert, Daniel Cole stood among veterans, families, and officials at Arlington National Cemetery on Memorial Day. As the crowd gathered to honor fallen soldiers, the familiar chords of his song played through the loudspeakers. For a moment, the entire nation stood still, listening to the words that had become an anthem of remembrance. Looking around, Daniel saw Gold Star families holding on to each other, veterans standing in solemn salute, and young soldiers listening intently. His song had reached beyond generations, reminding people that sacrifice is more than history. It is personal, it is real, and it must never be forgotten. As the final note played, Daniel reflected on how one tribute had become something greater than himself. The song had not only touched millions but had also raised awareness and funds for veterans in need, ensuring that those who served were not only remembered but supported. In an interview later that day, a reporter asked, "What does this song mean to you now?" Daniel, his voice thick with emotion, simply replied, "This isn't my song anymore. It belongs to them, the ones we lost, the ones who came home but never truly left the battlefield. As long as we sing their names, they'll never be forgotten." And in that moment, his words rang true, because a nation had remembered, and it always would. Daniel Cole's story teaches us a profound lesson about remembrance, sacrifice, and the power of a single voice. His song, written in a moment of pain and loss, became more than just music. It became a bridge between generations, a reminder of the cost of freedom, and a call to never forget those who gave everything. In today's fast-moving world, it's easy to let history fade, to view fallen soldiers as names on a memorial rather than real people with families, dreams, and unfinished stories. But Daniel's journey shows that remembrance isn't just about looking back, it's about ensuring their legacy lives on. President Trump's unexpected reaction to Daniel's performance also highlights a rare moment of unity and shared respect. proving that honor and sacrifice go beyond politics. True patriotism isn't about division, it's about standing together to remember those who can no longer speak for themselves. Most importantly, Daniel's story reminds us that one person's tribute can inspire a movement. His willingness to share his pain through music gave a voice to countless veterans and Gold Star families, proving that as long as we remember, no soldier is ever truly lost.